introduce our featured reader for this evening. He's a poet. His name is Daniel DeKerlegand. Did I get that right, Daniel? Yes. Finally, after a half semester, I finally got it right. Okay. Anyway, Daniel was born in Honolulu and grew up in, where was it? Right across from Milton.
It was Milton.
It was Milton, right across from Maurice. Oh, okay. And then he got his undergrad degree at the University of New Orleans. And I see the transcript, so I can attest to that. And he also got his Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the University of Arizona. So, yes, it's so far, far away. All right. Not a lot of water there, is there? No. That's why you're back, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, at any rate, I would like for you to welcome, that's right, one more thing. He is currently working on, it's a work in progress, but he's working on a volume of poetry that he hopes to have published sometime in the near future. So, please give your attention, your consideration, and your welcome to Daniel DeKerlegand.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elmon. Thank you and Dr. Fontenot for having me. It's good to be here. Some of my students said they would be here tonight, but I don't actually see them in the crowd, so I'll have to ask them why that is tomorrow. Okay, well, the poems I'm going to read tonight are primarily coming from my book that I'm working on at the moment, which is called tentatively The Devil in Arcadia. And Arcadia for me is a reference to Acadia and Acadiana, and I came up with this title before I realized that Daryl Bork had been working on a project much more intricate than my own. And I don't know if any of you saw Daryl Bork read here recently, but it was really great to hear him read. And anyway, so a lot of these poems are dealing with situations from Louisiana, so some of these settings or these events you might recognize, some of these figures you might recognize, and some you might not, so we'll see. This is the first poem in the book, and it's dealing with an accident that I had, and that was kind of like the I guess, opening of the book, I guess. It opened up my way of entering the book and thinking about the book, and literally there was an opening in the form of a wound, and so this is kind of the idea in the poem. With a needle I bored a soda can shim, wedged it where a lens would be, so I could shutter it at my own speed, let light come in dumb. Jackknifed the city glow, pinholed, lapsed that light filtered slowly through a dime store camera hole, but it never could have caught the moment when the terror of a continent sharpened itself in leaded glass and stole a lifetime of light as it burrowed a nest in my eye root. So most of these poems don't actually have titles because it is a serial poem, so the poems themselves kind of run from one to the next without so much of a title, even though the sections themselves do have a title. But this next poem is about a traitor, and I'm sure many of you know about the tradition of traitors in the area. Look at this picture of a traitor. She stares back coldly at you. She practices the laying on of hands. Does this transgress the church? Is your condition le mal ongle? She must pass this touching on to her son. She stares at you to tell you you cannot learn. That tradition cannot move in a photograph, the bad angle in the history of the body. She does not come to accept gifts from you, nor to cure you or stop the bleeding. One day there will be no more traitors to strange, still there is this document, the ink you should rub against your chest. Darken yourself, boy, let yourself vanish. Va. This next poem is from a section of poems that kind of runs throughout the book that does have a title, and it's called The Devil in the Woods, and it directly kind of relates to the overall title of the book, The Devil in Arcadia. But The Devil in the Woods is kind of more of, the poems are more dealing maybe with childhood and ideas of juvenile delinquency sometimes, or sometimes temptation, I don't know, The Devil in the Woods, but they're kind of written as prose poems, so they have a little bit more of a story going on that runs throughout the book. The trail tears a path through the woods from the juvenile detention center to the river. When the sun is low enough, you can see the banana spider's webs light up like one giant cocoon and wrap around you. It is a claustrophobic experience and is their only defense, being non-venomous. Further in, someone hammered a doorknob into a tree at the river's edge. And so the story continues on throughout the book. Okay. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Avery Island and Jefferson Island, so these are two settings in this poem. Night pitch and windshield the light takes, each random reflection a back way home. I drive through dusk, banned for trespassing on Avery Island, on Jefferson Island. I, a body of muck defined by a lack of surface. Sometimes I broke through the neighborhood, put my teeth on the curb and waited for love. Now pull the bed sheets up. Now cover one eye so that I cannot not see both your eyes, so I do not turn to mist. I see half a hotel ceiling through bullet holes in the bed baseboard, through tears in time, in a child's pocket, like the Buddha from Shumpha Temple. Its left ear cut off by tourist, hears the sky. Commissioned by Emperor Huizong between 1101 1125. Now it listens to the rattling of chisels in the salt dome settlers mistook for a mountain. And I don't know if you've been to Avery Island recently, but actually someone did cut off the ear of the Buddha in the temple there, and someone stole that ear. And that was kind of my thinking about the beginning of that poem. And this poem is about Avery Island, so both of those islands figure prominently in the book. In the beginning, je me reviens. That morning, the house sunk into the lake, only the chimney visible from the surface. No more children to turn a key in each keyhole, little pies encrusted with barnacles. Now the house is inhabited again, though the lake is still. You adapt yourself to the fish that scuff your walls, the voices in your throat. These photographs show how, when the drill bit hit the mine, the lake bottom opened up, 65 acres unmoored, swallowed land, your house, your barge, your trees drug into the abyss. No women or children were lost, only 3 dogs, and fish picked the last bits from the third one's little bones. I am a countryman, not opposed to the idea of inspiration or helplessness. This poem is about Amédée Arguin, and if you haven't listened to Amédée's music, he's one of the biggest figures in Cajun music and Zydeco music, and this is a poem that I wrote not long after I first heard his music, whenever I really got back into Cajun music. Over the summer I actually bought an accordion, and I've been trying to teach myself some, and one of my best friends is Chris Stafford from the band Fufale, and so I'll try to, get him a beer and see if he'll teach me a song. but yeah, this is about Amédée Arguin. Weathering the storm this year, I told myself, try to return the song to the train that diverts control of the compass, the wheel, not the Model A, of the white men who ran over Amédée's throat, because he was a black man and took a handkerchief from a white woman's hand. We can crook our necks to the side, but still the freightliner sends us to war, or to God, or to rare snow, or like a pelican gathering fish, carries us in its chambered hold to show us him years later in Pineville, plumb crazy. And a few of the poems kind of break through the geography of Louisiana to where I actually composed the poems, which was in Tucson. So every once in a while, the mountains will sort of emerge from the Louisiana landscape, and this is one of those poems. When I sit down to write, I want to write so that you can hear my voice, teeth, tongue, sinuses. What I want is to feel pithy, homegrown, clear. I make a litany of purchases, iodine, glass, salmon roe. Each word carries within itself a dead language, that the grass still grows each time I type, that the cat appears out of, not love, but near, and a very old man walking to the edge of a basin stops, sits at a table so that he can gaze out and puff on his pipe. I remember him, he was me. Made of materials, we are true. Like a mountain over a mountain, your breath enters me. Some of the poems in this book are kind of written towards a number of friends of mine who growing up maybe made different life choices from me. And some of these poems are kind of callings to them to, hey, come back, come back out of this maybe sometimes dark space that you're living in. And this is one of those poems that is a sort of letter to a friend. Past the charcuterie, out there in the woods, you said they only flashed the knife at you. You were 5 at the time. A clawfoot tub you used to strip and slide into it with a cheap beer. Piano wood note, the cicadas won't shut up, so I throw a branch into the tree. Now your collar feels so tight it leaves a ring around your neck. Where was Sati at that age? Someone plays the cares and vexations out there in the woods until the blood runs up her veins, the piano as a phonograph. Was the curve of the trail groove out there snake-like? Was it circular, or was it more elliptical? And suddenly the sun shines a parallel line onto your head, light through the trees opening up your crow's nest. You guide your finger across the porcelain to give it voice, shrill tone. Some ancestors left Brittany during the Revolution, a French I cannot access. Your heartbeat, like the notes, rattles my chest. Look out across the bayou, the surrounding Avery Island, which is not an island. Speedboats spray mud across your field of vision. It is a salt dome above the swamp, no island. Baudelaire wrote that copulation is the lyricism of the masses. The more one speaks outside the body, what church tone, what ringing gong in your head could wake you from your isolation? The factory churns today's batch of Tabascos, picked out of habitat, vinegared, aged. You want to drive your car through the gardens, 100 species of iris. So gaudy, so Victorian, flourish, and yet the bird song. Mostly of the dragonfly and the wasp. Dragonfly, watch as it lands in my hand. It should return to my palm. And how will you cross yourself this time? By air, by water, our pathway curved like a rapid response. This is another one of the Devil in the Woods poems, so it's kind of a continuation of the story. Unfortunately, there are some gaps in between, but hopefully you can still get an idea of who this devil character is. There was little to say, trees in every direction. When the boy ran out of stones to drop, he took one out each of his teeth and placed it along the path. When he ran out of teeth, a terrible sound passed over the woods, and the trees bent so that their tips touched the ground, and still they did not break. But it was not a giant who stirred, he was wearing a suit. First they came to a scorched land of rocks and sand, and yet the cows there were fat and glossy. Soon they came to second land, a wet and abundant meadow where the cows were only skin and bone. The boy asked him, "What does this mean?" He said, "The fat and glossy cows are the poor who are content with what God has given them, and the emaciated ones are the rich who are never satisfied." The boy shrugged and asked, "Then what are these irrigation ditches?" "Those," he said, "are God's will." And this is an older poem that I had written a long time ago, but I revised it over time and over time and over time, and it changed, and it almost became a completely different poem. And as I was working on this book, I realized that it had actually grown back into the poem that it was at the beginning, which is kind of fitting because the poem itself is about a tree. And I don't know if you've heard the Dewey Balfour quote, but he says, "Culture is like a tree. You can't go hacking at the roots, but you can't go trying to cut down the branches every time a new one grows." And so I was thinking a lot about trees as I was writing this book. I am not a tree which grows into dirt and air, but you, draped in moss, draped in that space between pronouns. You licked and folded the page of declensions. Steady my hand as I wander, drunk across it, as I undo you, adding daily to this portrait of our home, a child playing, two Siamese cats. We will leave the windows open so that the curtains might blow away. Draw the lock shut and scribble in the margin. Put the glass down, it's time to come home. That we might distill ourselves, pure water and rye, that these are forms made vintage along with us, tree and juniper, return to the flat field. So you have a little bit more time? I only have a few poems left.
Yeah, you got a few minutes.
Okay. I don't have too much left. Okay, this poem is kind of fun, and it's not one that I read too often, but for a while my mom was really into ghost hunting, and we went and traveled around Louisiana ghost hunting, and I don't know how I feel about my beliefs in ghosts, but I definitely did feel like I gained some understanding through all of these experiences, and I especially got to see a lot of amazing buildings that have just been left in disrepair, historic buildings with a lot of history in them that have been completely abandoned for long periods of time. And this is a poem about ghost hunting with my mother. That was the original title of the poem. Push through the boards, creaking, the flask in your pocket, the razor slots in the old hotel, past the indecent glissandi of the spinning reel. Push that play button. The pony is dead. Father smelled like gin. You can't remember when they whipped you for speaking the language. Can't remember the yellowed wedding dress nailed to the wall. Your best friend left bleeding in the cane field. The empty pellet gun lying idle. Memory is only a glitch. The soul leaving the window, but a face still looks at you before you become an anaphora. Push. This poem is one of the first poems I really wrote about Louisiana because I was born in Hawaii and spent quite a bit of time there, and for a while all of the poems I wrote were kind of thinking about the place where I was born and where some of my extended family still do live, people who were from Louisiana but who had moved to Hawaii. But anyway, I wrote this poem whenever I was in Nicaragua with one of my best, closest friends who I stayed with while I was there, and I kind of got the idea of writing this poem whenever he was trying to two-step. And then later I was in a workshop and I had an assignment for writing an elegy for a friend who has not yet passed, and so My idea for this was an elegy for my friend, but also trying to teach him how to two-step. Time as a part of your throat wheezes from your lungs at your funeral. Cajuns crowd in black, two-step to the key change. No air conditioning in the hall, so we roll tobacco to warm you. Place a cigarette in your lips the night your body lays there white. You terrified until the gas runs dry. The truck sputters black air. It is atmosphere, it is humidity that teaches me to sleep. And the rays guiding your pale frown. The problem wasn't between us, but the moon and the stairs we built to reach it, and the walls that hid it. This poem is about a time that my father was videotaping me whenever I was a young boy as I was being swept out into the ocean off of Galveston Island. You never return to the night when your father plays victim, a strange woman's mouth as if full of barnacles, your mouth a small boy's body tossed in the waves. The more you accept the pain, the more it changes. These sentences once focused disperse themselves through. Look closely, the seaweed of a memory flow. Steadied hands keep the jackknife camera still, a water sensation in your lungs. You too should collect this footage of fair drowning. Leave the record of your body's dissolution as an ocean looks undisturbed. Out of doors, the way shrimpers board a waterlogged ship in the vacant, stilt-held summer houses. The elders on the river speak only Vietnamese. They came here during the war, and the girl floating in the river. When I feel like a ghost, I have trouble seeing the living, the flies and the crabs. Each thing that I buy has the potential to kill. And this is the last poem I think I'm going to read for the night, and this is an actual elegy for a friend. So, one fake elegy, one real one. Neon maypole at night, first person pronoun. This skyscraper was not built for worship. Came through the bottlenecks, city lights aglow on your skin, passed out stoned beneath the hot tub jets. And tonight I pass your body in my phone. I wonder, was it that they had you cornered? Anxiety pills, laser tag, acid in the park, and the bitterness, you poised to hold me as the smoke came pouring in. So tell me then, Pocahontas on Halloween, why was I the one to see you standing there in the supermarket with a bag of oranges in your hand as I stupidly held my German beer between the magazines and the door? Thank you.
Another hand for Daniel, please. Please. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break, about 5 minutes. Please buy something. Patronize our hosts, okay? And when we come back, it'll be time for open mic.